If Friedrich Nietzsche were alive today, he wouldn't be caught in the chaos, chasing women, overthinking emojis, or checking his phone like his soul depended on a reply. He wouldn't be waiting for validation. He'd be watching, silent, composed, dangerous. Because Nietzsche didn't play the modern dating game. He saw it. He studied power before it became a hashtag. He understood manipulation before it became social media strategy. He didn't see women as enemies or enigmas. He saw them as mirrors, tests, forces of nature, and most of all, as part of a deeper game of control. But Nietzsche, he refused to be a pawn. He stood above the board, unmovable, unshaken. More than a century ago, he warned men, if you don't understand how power really works, especially in relationships, you will be controlled by forces you can't even name. You'll mistake attention for affection, drama for desire, control for connection. This isn't a video about blaming women. This is a video about reclaiming your mind, about waking up, because once you see what Nietzsche saw, you can't unsee it. You'll stop reacting, you'll start thinking, you'll stop chasing, you'll start leading. And when the tests come, because they will, you won't flinch. You'll welcome them, because the man who walks in Nietzsche's footsteps doesn't ask for power. He becomes it. Nietzsche once wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." And in that sentence lies the secret of real power. Detachment. In today's world, most men walk around unknowingly shackled, chasing affection, begging for validation, confusing need with love. They scroll, swipe, text, wait. Their emotions? On auction. Their worth? Measured by replies. But Nietzsche's philosophy was forged in fire, in solitude, silence, and self-mastery. He saw need as weakness. He saw dependence on approval, attention, or affection as spiritual slavery. Because the moment you need her to be happy, to feel whole, to feel worthy, you give her the power to destroy you. That's not love, that's leverage. But the man who needs nothing, he becomes the gravity in the room, calm, centered, dangerous. When a woman senses that you're not moved by her approval, when she realizes you're not seeking permission to exist, the dynamic flips. The air changes. You stop chasing. She starts questioning. You become the mountain. She becomes the storm that breaks against it. This isn't about being cold. It's about being complete. Nietzsche's vision of the Übermensch, the higher man, wasn't some arrogant alpha caricature. It was a man who had conquered his inner chaos, who didn't crave the world's attention because he'd already earned his own. And that's the paradox. The less you need, the more you attract. The more silent your soul, the louder your presence. The moment she knows you need her, you've already lost. But the Übermensch, he walks alone, and she follows. Not because he asked, but because he became something she couldn't ignore. Stop needing. Start becoming. Need is noise. Power is silence. Nietzsche didn't shout. He didn't plead. He observed. He listened. And when chaos came, he didn't enter the storm. He became the sky above it. This rule is simple but lethal. Do not argue emotionally. Why? Because the second you step into emotional chaos, you've already lost your center. And when you lose your center, you lose the game. Women don't test with logic. They test with emotion. Sudden mood swings, subtle provocations, irrational accusations. Not because they're cruel, but because they're wired to feel for strength. They want to know if your peace is real or if it shatters under pressure. And most men, they fold, they defend, they react. They step into the arena of emotion, thinking it's a conversation. It's not. It's a test. And when you argue back, when you match her tone, when you fight fire with fire, you both burn. But the man who stays still wins. Nietzsche taught that dominance isn't loud, it's quiet clarity. It's the man who sees the drama and chooses not to enter. It's the one who doesn't raise his voice because his presence already speaks volumes. Women don't remember the man who screamed back. They remember the one who didn't need to. Your calm isn't weakness. It's a mirror, one that forces others to face themselves. Your silence isn't avoidance. It's command. Because in a storm of emotion, the one who stays grounded becomes the anchor. She will scream. She will test. She will try to shake you. And when you look at her, steady, focused, unmoved, you become untouchable. Nietzsche called this the godlike state, where instinct no longer rules you. You rule it. Let others drown in drama. You rise, you observe, you hold your frame. Emotion is her weapon. Stillness is yours. Nietzsche once said, "No one can become enlightened without first facing their own darkness." You see, every man walks with a shadow, a hidden self, the parts we try to forget, shame, regret, guilt, weakness. We lock them away, hoping no one will ever see them. But here's the truth Nietzsche knew. What you hide controls you. What you ignore betrays you. And in relationships, that shadow becomes a target. Women, whether they know it or not, are biologically wired to test for strength, to scan for weakness. It's not cruelty, it's instinct. She'll push buttons, mention your past, joke about your insecurity. She's watching your face, not your words. She's searching, is he whole or hiding? Most men flinch. They defend. They explain. They bleed. But not the Übermensch. The man who walks through his own shadow, who's made peace with his demons, cannot be shamed, because what once bound him is now his armor. She brings up your past. You don't react. You've already faced it. You've already won that war. There's nothing left to fear. This is the power Nietzsche spoke of, the soul that has stared into the abyss and learned to smile. The modern man hides behind status, clothes, followers. But the rare man, he confronts what most men avoid. He drags his shadows into the light and makes them serve him. Because when your pain is owned, it can't be weaponized. When your flaws are accepted, they become strength. And when your darkness is mastered, no one, not even she, can use it to control you. Nietzsche's idea of the ultimate man wasn't someone who was perfect. It was someone who was whole. So here's your task. Know your shadow. Welcome it. Study it. Tame it. Because if you don't, she will. Nietzsche didn't believe in chasing. He believed in becoming. Most men today waste their strength battling for attention, flexing, posting, proving, all to stand out in a room filled with noise. They dress like competitors, speak like marketers, and live like products trying to be bought. But Nietzsche would ask, why fight to be chosen when you can build a life so radiant you become the only choice? He understood something modern men forget. A man who chases validation loses himself. A man who masters himself attracts everything. You don't rise by impressing her. You rise by outgrowing the version of yourself that once needed to. Most men place women at the top of their hierarchy as the reward. Nietzsche flipped the pyramid. For him, the highest pursuit wasn't affection. It was self-overcoming. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." That why? It's not her, it's you, your vision, your discipline, your internal war against mediocrity. That's where your strength is forged. So while other men dance to gain her glance, you go silent. You train, you build, you evolve. You don't chase women, you chase your potential. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to win her, you start becoming the man who can't be ignored, because attention fades, approval fades, But a man on fire with purpose, he becomes unforgettable. And the truth is, when she sees you not competing for her, not orbiting her world, but building your own, she feels it. She wonders, who is he? Why doesn't he need me? Why can't I stop thinking about him? And that's the shift from chasing to choosing, from boyhood to sovereignty. So let the world compete. Let them posture. Let them beg. You compete only with one man, the man in the mirror. The rest will follow. Nietzsche knew that what is rare becomes sacred, and what is always present becomes invisible. Today, we live in an economy of availability, instant replies, constant connection. Men make themselves open windows, always online, always accessible, always too eager. But here's the law of power Nietzsche would whisper in your ear. That which is always within reach is never truly desired. He wasn't talking about playing games. He was talking about controlling your energy, because your time, your presence, your mental space, these are currencies, and the man who spends them freely becomes bankrupt in respect. Nietzsche spoke often of the higher man, the rare individual who rises above the herd by building his own code, and part of that code not being governed by urgency. When you're too available, what you signal is not love, it's lack of purpose, lack of boundaries, lack of inner gravity. You orbit her, and orbiters are replaceable. You see, a woman doesn't fall for a man because he's always there. She falls for the mystery of why he's not. Where is he? What is he building? Why doesn't he need me? These are the questions that pull her in. Nietzsche understood that the highest form of seduction is withdrawal, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you are hard to get. Your time is earned, not given. Your presence is a reward, not a default. It's the principle of voluntary absence. When you become rare, you become remembered. When you disappear, you become desired. Not because you're manipulating, but because you're mastering something far more powerful than attention. You're mastering yourself, so don't apologize for your silence. Don't explain your distance. Own it, because the man who isn't always available becomes the one worth waiting for. Nietzsche warned us, he who cannot command himself will always be a servant. In the dance of power, emotional control is your greatest sword, and indifference is its sharpest edge. But let's be clear, we're not talking about apathy. Controlled indifference is not the absence of care, it's the presence of mastery. It's the ability to feel deeply, yet show only what is necessary, to want but not need, to be passionate but never enslaved by your passions. Because in this modern battlefield of dating, most men are ruled by reaction. A delayed reply makes them spiral. A cold glance ruins their day. They over-pursue, they over-explain, they chase, and chasing is the confession of powerlessness. Nietzsche would say, stop chasing. Become the thing that's chased. Controlled indifference doesn't mean you don't feel the sting of rejection or the thrill of attention. It means you feel it and don't flinch. You pause, you hold, you decide. Because you are not a reactor. You are an architect of yourself, of your mind, of your energy. When a man is indifferent to the games, he becomes unplayable, and that drives them wild. Why? Because in a world where everyone is seeking approval, the man who doesn't seek it becomes an enigma, a paradox. He is kind, but not compliant, present, but not predictable, warm, but not waiting. And that tension, that contradiction, it awakens something primal. Nietzsche knew the truth. We only obsess over what we can't fully possess. Controlled indifference creates that gap, that magnetic absence. It whispers, I like you, but I don't need you. I see you, but I see me first. This isn't arrogance, this is psychological gravity, so hold your line. Let silence speak. Don't answer every bait. Don't explain every move, because the man who keeps chasing loses her, but the man who chooses himself again and again becomes unforgettable. Nietzsche once said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." But here's what he didn't say: the higher you soar, the more terrifying you become when you descend. Because what truly disturbs and attracts is not consistency, it's duality. A man who is only kind is predictable. A man who is only dominant is exhausting. But a man who is both, that man is unforgettable. He breaks expectations, bends categories, and in doing so, he destroys comfort. Women, whether they admit it or not, are magnetized by mystery, not logic. And nothing is more mysterious than a man who can hold two opposing energies in one body. He is loving, but ruthless. He is gentle, but you sense the violence he keeps under lock. He listens, but behind his silence, 1,000 calculations are running. He is a puzzle with no edges. Nietzsche called this the Übermensch, the one who transcends binary thinking, who is not this or that, but this and that. And when you embody that paradox, you create psychological gravity. You're not safe, you're real, you're not good, you're whole. Because safety is boring. Predictability is for pets. But duality is dangerous. It tells her, you don't know me, not yet, and maybe never fully. And that is what keeps her up at night. Your goal isn't to impress. Your goal is to haunt, to walk the line between chaos and control so perfectly that she questions whether you're a dream or a threat. So become two, the shadow and the sun, the fire and the water. And every time she tries to define you, slip through her fingers. Because the man who can't be defined can never be replaced. Every woman carries a story in her mind, not about the man she wants, but the man she imagines. He's not real. He's a myth, a ghost stitched together from childhood longings, secret novels, half-forgotten ex-lovers, and Hollywood dreams. And here's the Nietzschean key. Don't destroy that fantasy. Possess it, occupy it, but never fully become it. Because once she can name you, once you become a man, you stop being the phantom. You see, we are raised to believe honesty is the highest virtue. But in the theater of attraction, mystery is God. Nietzsche warned against the brutal transparency of modern life, where everything is seen, labeled, explained. But the soul doesn't crave clarity. It craves wonder. Reveal just enough to stir her imagination. Leave just enough unsaid to grow in her absence. Because here's the trick. What she doesn't know about you will always be more seductive than what she does. Give her symbols, not stories. Fragments, not a full biography. The mysterious man isn't lying. He's curating. He knows his power is not in being known. It's in being felt. This is not deception. It's design. The man who feeds her fantasy becomes the canvas she paints her desires on. And because it's her fantasy, she'll defend you, obsess over you, fight for you, even if she doesn't fully understand why. You are the myth she's trying to solve, the equation that refuses to equal out, the cigarette smoke that lingers after you've gone. So be that smoke. Be the shadow in her mind she can't catch. Never give her the full picture, because as long as she's guessing, she's chasing. Every woman, consciously or not, tests. Not because she's cruel, but because she must know who you are before her soul submits, and she will not ask directly. She will provoke, tease, withdraw, guilt trip, joke, challenge. She is not looking for answers. She's watching your reaction. This is where boys fail. They explain, apologize, plead. But Nietzsche taught us, He who has a why to live can bear almost any how, and a man who knows his why does not bend for petty hows. So when the test comes, let it burn. Let the silence grow heavy. Let her stare turn ice cold. Let the air thicken with disappointment, and stand in it, unmoved. Because here's the paradox: the more you refuse to jump through her hoops, the more she'll believe you're the man she can finally respect. A man who obeys her whims is a pet, but a man who disobeys with dignity is a force. And women do not fall for comfort. They fall for conviction. She will call you arrogant. She may cry. She may threaten to leave. But deep down, in the primal part of her psyche, she'll whisper to herself, "This one cannot be broken." And that is the moment she begins to fall. You are not here to pass her tests. You are here to expose them, to show her that love is not control, that power does not beg. Because the moment you dance to her tune, she will never hear your music again. So be still, be sovereign, and if she must burn, let her. For only when her illusions turn to ash can she truly see you. Most men try to soothe women. They tell her she's perfect, innocent, kind, but the man of power does not flatter. He reflects, and not just the angel in her, but the beast. Every woman carries a darkness she's learned to suppress. Jealousy, rage, manipulation, lust, ambition. And society taught her to fear it, hide it, paint over it with virtue. But you show it to her, not to shame her, but to awaken her. Nietzsche said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Most men are too afraid to gaze, too afraid to confront her abyss, but you stare into it and smirk. You reflect her patterns, her projections, her contradictions. You don't argue, you don't preach. You simply let her see herself through the mirror of your unwavering presence. And at first, she will recoil. She will call you cold, dangerous, unfeeling. But then something strange happens. She will respect you. Then she'll begin to trust you, because you didn't fall for her mask. You touched her soul beneath it. And women don't bond with men who worship them. They bond with men who recognize them, the whole of them, light and shadow, angel and monster. So be her mirror, not the one that flatters, the one that reveals. Because when she sees the monster in herself and sees you still standing there, she won't just want you, she'll need you. Here's the mistake of weak men. They try to beat women at their own games. Games of charm, games of attention, games of emotional leverage. But a man of Nietzschean power doesn't compete. He transcends. You don't try to outflirt her, outplay her, or prove your worth through petty tactics. You rise above the board and make the rules irrelevant. Because a woman does not respect a rival. She surrenders to a force of nature. Nietzsche believed in the Übermensch, the man who creates his own values, his own meaning, his own world. And that's the key here. When a man refuses to compete, when he lives from such deep conviction that no external validation is necessary, he becomes unreachable. And the unreachable is irresistible. Because the modern woman has been trained to dominate, to manipulate, to test. But what happens when she meets a man who cannot be tested? A man whose sense of power does not react, but simply radiates? She becomes disarmed, then fascinated, then addicted. You do not win by playing her game. You win by inviting her into yours. And if she resists, good. You're not here to be accepted. You're here to dominate reality so thoroughly that she has no choice but to follow or be left behind. So don't sit at her table. Build the kingdom. Men who tell women everything, reveal nothing of value, because the moment she can fully understand you, she believes she can control you. Nietzsche once wrote, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster." But here's the twist. The true danger isn't becoming a monster. It's becoming ordinary, predictable, explainable, known. And that's where mystery becomes your greatest weapon. Not lies, not manipulation, but a carefully curated depth, a silence that whispers, "There's more to me than you'll ever see." Modern psychology tries to force vulnerability as virtue. Be open, they say. Share everything. But Nietzsche would scoff at that. Because if you wish to remain powerful, if you wish to remain magnetic, you must protect your interior world like a fortress. Reveal just enough to provoke fascination, just enough to stir obsession, but never the whole truth. Why? Because the human mind craves what it cannot solve. And the feminine psyche is an endless labyrinth of curiosity. A man of power is a myth walking among mortals. He gives her stories, not confessions, symbols, not blueprints. Because once she thinks she knows you, she'll subconsciously begin testing you, trying to find where the myth ends and the mortal begins. Your job: make sure the myth never ends. Make her wonder where you go when you disappear, what you think when you're silent, who you are when you're alone. Not out of cruelty, but out of power, because power thrives in ambiguity. Let her chase the edges of your soul, but keep the center untouched. Be her obsession, but never her possession. To be desired, you must not always be available. To be irresistible, you must at times be unreachable. Nietzsche understood something modern men forget. That absence isn't emptiness, it's power. He once said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." And those threads? They are made of longing. A man who is always present becomes furniture, useful, predictable, background. But the man who disappears with intention? He becomes a myth she longs to understand. The tragedy of most relationships today is emotional suffocation, a constant stream of texts, attention, validation, but real power is found in silence. Distance, not cruelty, creates gravity. You don't need to be cold, but you must learn to retreat, not as a tactic, as a truth, because your mission must always come before her emotions. You are not here to be her therapist, her diary, or her emotional sponge. You are the mountain she climbs to feel alive, not the pillow she cries into. Nietzsche's overman, the one who rises above the herd, is not ruled by emotion. He wields it like a sword. He knows when to give warmth and when to disappear into the shadows. If she never has a chance to miss you, she will never value you. If you're always chasing her, she'll stop running toward you. Let your absence cultivate hunger. Let your silence create echoes in her mind. A man who masters emotional distance becomes unforgettable, because in the space between your presence and your absence, she will build an entire mythology of you. And that mythology will haunt her deeper than any conversation ever could. What makes a man unforgettable? It's not his money, not his looks, not even his intelligence. It's his mystery. Nietzsche once declared, "Whoever despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." What did he mean? That even in hatred, in rejection, a man can hold power, if he remains unknowable. When you tell a woman everything, you rob her of the one thing she truly craves: discovery. We are wired to chase what eludes us, to solve puzzles, to break codes. And the moment you let her decode you entirely, you become solved, boring, predictable. The mysterious man, he doesn't hide. He reveals selectively. A look that hints at sorrow, but no explanation. A story half told. a silence that makes her ask, "What is he thinking?" This is not about being deceitful. It's about being dimensional. In a world of men who overshare, who perform emotional stripteases for validation, the man who says less becomes the canvas for her deepest projections. You want her to wonder, where did he learn to move like that? Why did his eyes change when I mentioned my father? What drives him when no one's watching? You want her mind working after you've left. Because when a woman can't figure you out, she doesn't move on. She digs deeper. Mystery is the soul's scent. It lingers longer than touch. It makes her feel like she hasn't just met a man. She's entered a myth. Nietzsche would call this the eternal recurrence, not just a return of the self, but the recurrence of questions. Be a man who evolves faster than she can define, who grows in shadows, who guards his center like a temple. Because once she thinks she knows you fully, she'll stop writing chapters in the story. But if she senses there's always more, she'll read until her eyes burn, and she'll still come back for the sequel. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." But when it comes to power, especially over desire, the opposite is just as true. He who has the strength to leave anything behind can endure everything. If you want to be respected by a woman, truly respected, you must possess the willingness to walk away. That's the test. Not charm, not seduction, not romantic gestures carefully planned, but the ability to say, without bitterness or drama, "I don't need this." Because here's the hidden truth. Neediness is the death of magnetism, and most men, especially intelligent ones, fall into the trap of emotional dependency. They fear that if they lose her, they lose everything. But Nietzsche warned us of this false idol. He called it slave morality, when your identity hinges on another's approval. When a woman knows you won't tolerate disrespect, that you'll leave without begging, that your love is a choice, not a weakness, you become untouchable. Because your backbone isn't made of her affection. It's made of your principles. Walking away doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about yourself than the fantasy of someone who doesn't value you. It means you're the prize. Not because you say so, but because you're willing to risk loneliness over disrespect. And paradoxically, that's when she'll chase you the hardest. Because we always want what we can't control. And no woman can control a man who controls himself. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Not power over others, but power over oneself. When she sees that, she won't just respect you, she'll revere you. So, remember, be seductive, be present, but above all, be ready to leave at any moment. That's not cruelty, that's sovereignty. Nietzsche believed in the Übermensch, the man beyond man, the one who rises above the herd, above fear, above manipulation. And in the battlefield of modern romance, the ultimate victory is not just to win the game, but to transcend it, to become the man who can't be played. You see, most men are caught in a loop. They try to impress, they chase validation, they study texts, strategies, red pill philosophies, trying to win women like pawns in a war. But here's what Nietzsche would say: become who you are. Not a copy, not a trickster, but a force of nature, unbothered, uninterested in games. Because the man who is unplayable is unshakable. When a woman tries to manipulate a man like this, with silence, with hot and cold, with jealousy or contempt, she finds her tactics bounce off him like arrows on iron. Because he sees the game, he's studied it, and then he moved beyond it. He doesn't respond to drama. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't argue for respect. He simply demands it with his presence. And that's the paradox. When you stop playing, you start winning. Women sense it immediately. You're not reactive, you're grounded. You're not impressed, you're discerning. You're not trying to get her, you're deciding if she's earned you. This is not arrogance, it's authenticity. The highest form of power is not dominance, it's detachment. Nietzsche warned us against becoming the last man, the weak, agreeable, safety-seeking version of masculinity. But the man who transcends the game, he becomes mythic. He doesn't chase status. Status follows him. He doesn't seduce. He magnetizes. He doesn't argue for love. He commands it by who he is. Not by playing, but by refusing to be played. This is the 16th and final rule. Not a tactic, not a trick, but a transformation. Become the man she can't figure out. Because you figured yourself out. The 16 rules are not about controlling women. They're about reclaiming control over yourself. And in doing so, becoming the one thing no woman can ever manipulate. A man of power, a man of principle, a man who chooses rather than chases, a Nietzschean man. As Nietzsche said, become who you are. These 16 rules aren't just strategies to outsmart women. They're a path to outsmarting yourself, breaking free from weakness, manipulation, and illusion. Because true power isn't taken, it's earned. It's born from struggle, self-mastery, and relentless honesty. Now the question is, are you ready to stop chasing the game and start becoming the game itself? If this video resonated with you, if you're ready to step into the Nietzschean ideal of strength, drop a fire emoji in the comments below. Tell me, which rule shook you the most? Which one will you master first? And if you want more deep dives into philosophy, psychology, and the raw truths about power and human nature, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Because this journey, it's just beginning. Remember, the greatest power is to become who you truly are. No masks, no games, just you.